Hello YouTube. Today we're going to cover my Super Black Eagle 2 from Benelli. We have a few key points to talk about: the intended purpose of this gun for my needs, ergonomics, the parts list, improvements, and then my conclusion on this firearm. So the intended purpose of this gun for my needs, for me it's a hunting gun primarily, and it used to be my main firearm for collegiate shotgun shooting. I shot skeet mainly, American. That was the variety I shot, and I used this gun all throughout my collegiate career, and I have many rounds through this firearm. I chose the Super Black Eagle 2 specifically because I had shot a few of my buddies' Benelli Legacies and similar Montefeltros, and I forget the other models, but similar Benellis, where it's the one-piece receivers. And they had the fancy wood stock and like the engraving and the silver plating or whatever they call it on their shotguns. And they, after shooting them, they're very soft shooting firearms. So I bought the Super Black Eagle 2 specifically because it has a 3.5-inch chamber, and I want to do a lot more duck hunting and goose hunting eventually. So having a 3.5-inch chamber is quite nice to run those really magnum loads of like heavy number 6 or 4 or whatever, depending on what animal you're shooting. So that's why I went the Super Black Eagle 2. I will note this gun has worked perfectly fine with anything from the lightest 2 3/4 loads like this, or just garbage Federal and Winchester, up to the magnums. I've never had one issue with this firearm. It cycled everything consistently, and it always ejects the cartridges with positive authority. So the ergonomics, we'll talk about that real quick, of this firearm. As you can see in the back, hopefully, the stock itself, it's the ComfortTech stock where you have the adjustable cheek piece where you can swap out the inserts for whatever comb you like to run, the comb height. And then you can get different butt pads back here for left and right-handed shooters, as well as you can adjust the drop and cast of the stock in the rear with shims that are provided from Benelli in the box. So you just take the stock off and you put the shims right here. I have it set up in the factory configuration that it comes in. It fit me pretty darn well, so I didn't see the need to modify the gun in any way, shape, or form there. And same for the form. Totally factory, nothing done there. This gun tends to fit people really well. It tends to be on the smaller length, the shorter length of pull back here compared to like a Remington. And since the recoil pad itself is a lot softer, you can pull the gun in tighter even if you're smaller, so it fits more people a little better. But I mean, it'll fit anyone, no problem, more or less. The gun itself is very, very lightweight. It's an aluminum lower receiver with a steel upper half and a steel barrel. So instead of like a Remington 870 where it's a one-piece receiver, this is a two-piece, and it just pulls off the front, and then you pull out the bolt and the carrier right off the front of the rails. And then your recoil spring itself goes through the rear of the stock. It's a really lightweight gun. My 870 is fairly lightweight as it already is, but this is even lighter. I don't know the specific weight of the gun, but I think it's right around like maybe 5 or 6 pounds. It's very light. After a full day of hunting, you don't feel like you've really carried anything, so that's always a plus. And two, for how light it is compared to the 870, it's a very mild gun just because it is semi-automatic with a recoil spring through the rear of the stock. That does absorb a lot of the impact from shooting like 3.5-inch shells, and the ComfortTech stock also takes care of some of that recoil and really helps tame it, even though it's not too bad to begin with, but you don't really feel anything. You can put 1,000 rounds to this gun in a day and it won't hurt your shoulder at all. So for parts list, I haven't done really anything with the gun besides change out the factory chokes for Carlson's full choke, but everything else is totally factory. Every single component on the inside, all the springs, nothing's changed on it. I will note that the bead sight in the front, it has a mid bead and then a front fiber optic bead. That did break in half while I was hunting one day, and I have not replaced it, so I have half of a bead up there. It's not a big concern to me because I don't use it, but it's one thing to note. That is a replaceable item, and I think you can get different inserts like green and white and all sorts of colors, but I just have the half factory one in there. This gun from the factory, it's a pretty darn good shooter. I mean, it's set up really, really well. It comes with 5 chokes, cylinder, modified full, and then light modified, and then I think um, improved modified or whatever the one above modified is. I don't recall. I've never used them, and it comes with a nice like choke wrench, and you can clean the threads out too in the barrel, which is really nice. Unlike the Remingtons, where you have to put your finger in there and do it by hand. So that is a really nice feature. I don't really have any improvements for the gun or anything that you could address on it. I mean, it's pretty solid as is. I guess if you really want to, you could swap out the fiber optic sight, put on a different charging handle, different magazine follower, but from the factory, it's pretty darn well set up, and I don't really see anything to fix. So the general conclusion I have on this firearm after about 7,000 plus rounds through it, um, it obviously lasts. The finish is held up really, really well. On the left-hand side, which you can't see, it's not as perfect, and my vent rib does have some dents and scratches in it from hunting and just being dropped from the side of a truck where it was leaned up against, tipping over and everything. But it's held up really well. The bolt hardly shows anywhere on the outside, and the rails they're pretty darn silvery. The finish has worn off on those, just on the bolt itself, but the receiver hardly shows anywhere. Um, it's a darn good gun. It holds up, and it's fun to shoot. The variety of ammo that you can put through this gun is quite nice. The various loads is also quite nice because you can shoot from the lightest skeet loads to the heaviest magnum loads, and this gun will run perfectly fine, even if it's in conjunction. If you alternate the load and everything, totally fine. This is the 26-inch barreled model, which is quite nice. It's pretty darn handy, and I don't see any issues with running a shorter barrel like this compared to like a 28 or a 30. If you run a full or an extra full, it shoots just as well, and it's really consistent. So overall, it's a good gun. I would recommend buying an SBE1 or an SBE2. They're darn good guns, and I don't have any experience with the new Super Black Eagle 3, but it looks pretty darn good. I don't know if I'm going to really ever get to shoot one, but I would highly recommend the Super Black Eagle 2 if you find one for a halfway good deal. I think they're running right around $1,600, and it's a worthwhile purchase. This gun will last forever, and yeah, it's just a tank. So don't hesitate to buy a Super Black Eagle 2 if you're on the edge, because I know on a lot of the forums people are saying they have issues running the lighter loads, but I've never experienced that, and I have a lot of rounds through this gun. So this is my Super Black Eagle 2 and the overall conclusion on it.